I have a question, Michelle. Is this project going to take sewage off the ground?
I'm sorry. Hopefully,
Okay.
hopefully,
It's a good answer, hopefully.
hopefully. Does any of the public have any questions about what we just did since that was added to the agenda?
I have a question about this project. Is this something that is, the DEP is requiring, or is it absolutely necessary and the residents up there want it?
So there was a consent order at one time which was satisfied temporarily, but there is some homes up there that are due to fail, much like the one that did, that caused the consent order. Eventually something's gonna need to happen up there. We're gonna have to go in one direction or the other up there.
Okay, but my question is this something that can wait until we figure out how much money the township has rather than spend it right now on
So one of,
engineering fees and?
yes, so one of the issues that we talked about yesterday, this H2O grant has not been that readily available for how many years now? Like it's been a long time. So this is almost like a unicorn just came out
Okay.
to apply for this grant that nobody's gotten anything for years from. Yeah, I mean, it is a question whether or not to spend the $5,000 on engineering towards this project, but I don't know where else we would get any grant money for this project.
I thought there was a DEP under Act 537 or something, didn't there a study or something, they said you had to put that in there?
Well, I
There
think,
was a consent order one time.
I think the thing about it is, when you began this project, there should be, I think we talked about this the other day, there should be an estimate of what the project's gonna cost. Local contribution, O&M, debt service. So, when you did your study on this, I asked the other day, what is the estimate with the current funding for tap fee and for monthly user rates? Do you know what that is?
Yes, it's all in the Act 537 plan, which is not in front of me right now, but I'd be glad to pull that and we can see those numbers.
Because I think that's the issue this gentleman's asking for. The question is because when you do projects, you basically, the funding of projects is based upon the tap fee and based upon the user rates. If it goes so much above, you won't get the funding to do the project. So that's where I'd like to know, I think what the board needs to know is what the monthly user rate is going to be with the current project cost, with the funding, because if it's too high, we won't get the funding.
What we'll do between now and the next meeting is we'll pull a copy of that 537 plan and just get it out to everybody so you can see that.
We got that yesterday.
A lot of folks have been here know about this project because it's been in discussion for years. So a lot of folks know the service area, know the problems, and probably familiar at a high level. But since we're getting closer to actually maybe getting this project funded and building it, it's a good chance to get a refresher. To Dennis' point, to take a look at the budget, because it's been a couple years now since the 537 plan, to refresh those numbers and look at user rates and tap-in fees. To the gentleman's question, it is part of the consent order that the township pursue sewage of this area, which is what we're doing, the 537 plan, going after funding. The other part of your question, does the township have to spend too much money on this? And the answer is, if it's not financially viable, you can't do it and you won't do it. So the goal that we're sitting with right now is to get the project shovel ready, and then the next part to make it financially viable. And the way to do that, a project this size, is to get grants and to get low interest loans. And the first opportunity, real opportunity we have for good grant money is this H2O grant, which is, as you mentioned, a unicorn, a program that's been unfunded for a long time. But it will literally fund millions of dollars if we can win the project, or win the grant. So this is our first step. Next step would be to have a Penvest application filed, which would be low interest loans. But yeah, until we can get the project funded, it's not going to go in.
How do we rank with DEP in terms of this project? Because when you get funding, DEP, you go through a process of getting ranked for funding. Have we gone through that process? Do we rank?
No, that won't happen until we begin submitting to Penvest. And then when that goes into Penvest, that's when DEP also gets involved to rank the project. The soonest that would happen is in February.
So if we applied for, usually when you apply for projects, you apply for both Penvest and RUS at the same time, have a joint meeting. Have we gone that route yet or not?
No, we've touched base with Penvest, they're aware of the project, they have the information on it, they're not ready to receive the application until we get the water quality permits.
Okay.
That's probably one of the big permits that's hanging out there. Our tentative submission on water quality permit, Sean, do you remember?
Right now, our first chunk of MPDS permits is the MPDS permit, the Part 1 permit, which was submitted, which they won't review until everything else comes in. There's a few general permits along with a joint permit, and DEP wants all those permits submitted in one bundle to them at once. So we're getting close to submitting those. One of the issues we have right now was signatures for all the applications. Typically the secretary signs off on a lot of that stuff, so our guys are putting the finishing touches on it. I'm gonna provide the board with big application full of paperwork so you all know what would be getting signed as far as the permit applications go. We'll also need some fees that go in with those permit applications. So that's the first chunk of permits. Then there's the Part 2 permit on top of that, which will be worked on as soon as all these ones are finished. Once that Part 2 permit is submitted and all the permits are approved, that is when we can start talking to Penvest. And additionally with Penvest, they're gonna want a lot of township financial information along with probably resident
When are they gonna
information
need
in
that?
that area, so.
How fast will they need that?
That's a good question.
I don't know,
There's-
secretary.
We'd like to know the township financial information.
I would like to know, I would love to know, but
Who you gonna call?
I would say probably second quarter of next year,
I'm really trepidatious about this right now,
because if,
because I'm
So
not
what-
sure we can afford to do this.
Well, the thing is, what it's doing is,
Apply.
making the application, but I think what you need to know first is you need to know that amendment to the Act 537 plan, because the amendment to the Act 537 plan should include an estimate of the construction cost. When did you last do this Act 537 modification?
We did an update to the Act 537 when the treatment plant was moved locations. I believe that was winter of last year.
So you did the winter last year, and those prices have jumped up way high.
Right.
I mean, I'm just telling you, price of pipe is, you guys know as well as I do, it's gone up astronomical.
Now, when I was sitting in the audience last few years, you guys would talk about this H2O grant. Is this for the same, and I know it wasn't as funded as it is this year, but is this the same project you were going for H2O the last couple of years?
do you remember if we submitted this project to H2O? It's quite possible, Michelle.
I know the
think they
project
got
was
it.
submitted to H2O once before. I'm not sure why, as they didn't have funds. I think it was they could approve the project with the hope of it being funded during that year, but yeah, it didn't make too much sense to me. I did reach out to the lady. She said she sent the township a letter saying
And how much of it was?
it looked good, but there was no funding available.
So we have to December 21st to fill this out. How long does it take to do the grant application?
About a week of full-time work from
So
one engineer.
maybe if you want to just table this till he gets you the information on the Act 537 plan. And the question I have again is the cost. I mean, the cost of price and inflation has just been 8, 9, 10%. So maybe what you do is, if you want to make a motion, it's up to you folks, it's not my decision, but make a motion to table that motion, and then basically get us the information for, we have a meeting, 2 weeks, on a Wednesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah, after she wrote, well, you're tabling it so we know what the motion is the next time. She's mad she wrote that all down.
Yeah, it's up to you.
I do have a question on signing.
You can do what you want. you know.
We're gonna we will need some resolutions and things by the board. There's a meeting on the 22nd, and then is there a meeting at the beginning of December, sometime before the deadline? Okay, so if you give us the go-ahead on the 22nd, then at the next meeting, we could get whatever resolutions are needed, and then hit the deadline of the 21st for the application.
And I'm gonna be I'm not comfortable with making a motion to do this until you can tell me what it's gonna cost,
Sure.
what the user rate's going to be,
And the tap fee.
and the tap fee, because
Yeah, all of that's in the Dagon report. I just don't have it on my desk in front of
without
me.
that
so-
information,
For those of you who like paper, the Act 537 for this project was in the back office there where I set up the
And this, I mean, this project, at least according to the consent order from DEP, it's something that has to be done.
Something has to be done. There
It
was
just
other
has
alternatives to this project, though.
That's true, yeah.
There
So
is
that
alternatives.
this area
There's
has to be
alternatives.
sewered according to
This
consent
isn't
order.
the only solution.
That's what, right, there's.
Well, Harshman's gonna write us a big grant for this, they're gonna donate to this project, she'll be all right.
That's right, I want a brass plaque on the treatment plant, right on the digester.
I have one more change to this agenda, although you're gonna kill me. So I was provided the meeting minutes to the last meeting after I was done with the agenda. That's the pitfalls of not having a secretary treasurer is that one of the supervisors, was working on the minutes and the other supervisor was working on the agendas. So I did not get the approval of the meeting minutes onto this agenda.
Bring it next meeting, we can approve.
No, we're approving them. You got them? Y'all were provided them?
Did we table that motion about?
Yeah, we got a motion to table that.
Yeah, we got a table.
So if there's a motion to have, if there's a motion to table, you have to ask for a second. And
Okay.
there's no discussion on
We have a
motion to table.
motion to table the, Harshman applying for the H2O grant, not to exceed